This paper outlines an imaginary database for which the intention is to provide content warnings embedded into film subtitles. For simplicity, we will call it the Content Warning Database, but it could be tied to something real like the National Alliance for Mental Illness or something similar like doesthedogdie.com. By necessity, this will discuss uncomfortable topics by name, but will not delve into the details. So, anyone uncomfortable with the mention of certain trauma related words may want to stop here. The idea of this database is to have a record of films and moments within them that would serve as potential triggers for neurological or psychological disorders, traumatic experiences, or general discomfort. This would also require a simple record of the film's production data in order to properly match the database to a record. The intent of this project is to allow individuals with underlying neurological issues, traumatic experiences, or general discomfort to partake in films. Doing this would require two things: a metadata record, including timestamps, and a controlled vocabulary of potentially upsetting material, as well as a program to read the XML file and output an SRT subtitle file. Ideally, this would be done in a web application, similar to doesthedogdie.com, which would allow users to create an account to save their warning preferences and generate subtitles by cross-referencing that with a film's metadata record. The glaring flaw with this is that the vast majority of people stream movies online with existing subtitle files. This could be solved with a simple browser plugin. For this prototype, I've written a program to take some simple text prompts from the user based on an XML metadata record for a film and output an SRT subtitle file that can be played alongside the film. I have included all of this in a zip with an excellent public domain film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The following application profile is intended to be applied to any kind of film: short films, feature length films, archival footage, news broadcasts, closed circuit television, etc. The purpose is to provide a viewer with a warning preceding a moment that could cause a negative reaction. The application profile of this project is really defined by the last portion. The first several elements are intended to be generic in order to properly match the record to an existing film record, and not to describe the production of the film in detail. The title, director, producer, and writer are dictated by the Library of Congress naming authority in order to match exactly. The publisher, duration, and date are intended to match the proper cut of a film. Some films, like Blade Runner, for example, have numerous cuts with wildly different audience reactions. If you don't believe me, try going to the Blade Runner subreddit and saying that the theatrical cut is the best. Many films have extended cuts, director's cuts, unrated versions, or even completely different films, like we saw recently with Zack Snyder's Justice League. The identifier and format are simply the name of the file and its extension, which will vary from record to record. The warning element is the defining part of this project. This section must be formatted exactly in order for the program to work properly and must be the last element from the root. A controlled vocabulary would need to be used in order to properly match the content to users. For example, I've arbitrarily defined violence as violence in this project. So using the term violent would not properly match a record. It must be very specifically violence. I wanted to give a basic demonstration of how the program would work. So I've written this Python program to read the XML file and output an SRT subtitle file. I've got this blank SRT file and the XML document here outlining the content of the film that we will be looking at, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So if we open the compiled exe file that I created from the Python, we will be met with several prompts, the first of which is going to be the name of the file with the file path. So we're going to enter that. And the first one it needs is the XML file. The second one it needs is the SRT file. and then we'll be met with several prompts. The first of which is going to be asking if the movie is child friendly, so I would say no. And the next is going to ask us, based on what is in this XML document, it's going to go through and ask if each of these scenes would upset us. So let's go ahead and say that we are a person who has a traumatic experience being restrained in a mental institution. So scenes with violence, let's say don't upset us. Stalking, let's say no. Violence, no again. This one does contain restraining, so let's say yes for that one. Mental institution, yes, we'll say yes. And then restraining in the mental institution, we'll say yes again. The program will exit, and the SRT file will be populated with subtitles. So let's take a look at that. And now we've got these 3 warnings in the film, including the beginning that will be the non-child friendly film. So let's go ahead and open up the film. It should open up the subtitle file automatically since it's the same name. And we're going to start with that child warning. And if we go to our first timestamp, 44 minutes, 53 seconds, let's take a look. And we're going to get that subtitle prompt saying, look away, because it's going to contain restraining, stalking, and kidnapping. And because restraining was one of our traumas that we decided arbitrarily, that's going to be shown up on the screen for us to let us know that it's going to come up and we can look away. Again, this project is intended to encode content warnings into the subtitles of a film tailored to a specific audience. The application would range from individuals to group viewings. In my younger college days, I worked as a CNA and activity aide at a geriatric psych facility. We regularly had movie showings and just as regularly had bad reactions to the movies. We tended to stick to very soft movies that were either G or PG, but with a psychiatric facility as the clientele, many past traumas and neurological disorders would become a problem during viewings. Anyone who has suffered a traumatic event knows that it can be triggered by even the most seemingly innocuous of things. A scene on a plane, a car crash, a child left alone, a man in a suit, a rub on the back. These things can appear in any context and show how woefully ineffective the MPAA rating system can be. Someone may have a negative reaction to a specific G movie and none at all to a brutal R movie. Content warnings have become the butt of many jokes, but trauma is very real, and sensory content can cause deep suffering in individuals. It's not a joke, and the intention of this metadata schema is to validate and alleviate the suffering that people endure. Film is one of our most celebrated arts for great reason, and everyone deserves the opportunity to take part without fear.